raspberries, climate cherries.
When the civil rights movement became the black nationalist movement, the misogyny that black men share very deeply with white became more and more intense. Black nationalist men took this and started researching African history and began to say, well, in Africa, it is always the men who rule and the women bear children and they plant their little vegetable gardens. You must retreat from the controlling role you have had and, for example, symbolically walk 3 paces behind your man. During political meetings, we will sit and busy ourselves with embroidery or some such things. We will not talk when the men talk. The energy that should have gone towards fighting the system turned itself on to fighting black women, and the failure to deal with us as human beings, the insistence that to gain our manhood as black men, we will spit upon black women, because that'll give us the strength we need to fight white men, you see. That is where all of the energy went, and that is one very important reason that the black movement has in large part fallen apart. I was worn out, I was exhausted, I had seemed to have lost energy and interest in something called the black movement, in politics that means. And I began to read feminist theory and I said, oh, it is possible for me to use every part of myself and still be political. I don't have to say, well, that part of me is female and that's not important. We don't have to talk about that. This part as the exclusively black part is fine, or this part as the leftist part, you know, and not the black part is fine if I'm at a white leftist meeting. All of a sudden it was possible for me not to have to deny huge portions of myself to be politically active. And when I say me, you know, I speak for, I suspect, most black women who encountered feminism. There are horror stories of women who had been brainwashed into believing we were supposed to answer every black man who approached us on the street, because of course it was all about sisterhood and brotherhood and love. And some man would say, hey sister, how you doing? And you would say, hello brother, and you get slapped. In some occasions you might get raped. The next thing you knew, this man was following you down the street saying, oh, you know, let's go to bed, and you'd say no, and he'd be screaming, you dirty black bitch at you. You know, what's the matter with you? Every trick, you know, every exploitative warrior trick men have ever used was rolled out on us in the name of the black movement. My encounters with men, you know, the simplest encounter with a man, whether a man you work with or someone you have dinner with, the simplest encounter can turn into a conflict. So one is always watchful there. I'm always assessing women I meet in terms of, you know, how do we feel about them? How are we relating to such and such situation? For better or worse, there is not a situation in one's daily life that does not have feminist subtext, superstructure, implications, and one is constantly aware of them. Even when you want to rest, it stands up and hits you in the face. All right, there is a very good sentence written by a black woman named Kay Lindsay in which she said, where the white woman is the sexual object, black women are sexual laborers. Yes. White womanhood has been the prevailing standard of femininity in this country. If you were beautiful, you had pale skin. And women have only gained by being beautiful. You had light skin, preferably light hair. You were gentle, you were retiring, you were sweet, you were chaste. Because of our historical position as black women, most of us were slaves, which means we worked as hard as any men on plantations. Then we moved into factories. Most of us were not pure because on plantations we were bought to be breeders and whores. We were not qualified for the prevailing standards of femininity, white femininity, so we were cast out. If you are a woman who does not fit women's standards, you're a piece of crap. So we got none of the benefits of being a woman. They're double-edged benefits, but they are benefits. Money from wealthy men, so on and so forth. We got all of the liabilities. As I said before, we are on the lowest rung, even in a profession like prostitution, because we are valueless as black women. So we were brought up outside the pale of femininity, but we weren't considered worth turning into useful men. You know, because what is a black woman? She's a woman and she is also black. We weren't as good as black men, and we were useless. We weren't good enough to be imitated white women, so we had nothing. We were total outsiders. which is why, you know, economically we are on the absolute bottom, and psychologically, if you will, of the barrel. As I say, figuring out a theory that will embrace the paradox of fighting sexism, fighting the sexism of a group of people who are fighting racial and economic oppression from another group. It's a very interesting pyramid. It is black women being oppressed by white women who are also black women being oppressed by white women, black men, and white men. That is a situation that only non-white, if you will, black, Latin, so forth, Chinese women find themselves in. It is the kind of complexity that the white feminist movement has not yet in any way attempted to deal with.